Hey kawan, welcome to EDCReady. Today we are doing a full review of this knife. This is the ZT0450CF. It is by far the most premium knife in my collection. I got this on sale from thomastool.com.my. So if you want to check out that website, they have helped out the channel before. You can check out the link in the description below. You can find your way to thomastool.com.my. So this knife right here, this is the ZT0450CF. It's from a company called Zero Tolerance. And even though I got it on sale, it is still by far the most expensive knife in my collection. So let's get into the measurements, starting with the weight measurement right here. We have here in grams. It comes in at right around 68 grams. Let's measure that again, centralize it. Yep, right around 68 grams, which is pretty much around 2.4 ounces. And let's now take out my calipers and start measuring this bad boy right here. We have a blade length of 3.26, 3.25 officially on the website, which is, well, 3.25 inches or 3.26. We have a blade stock thickness of 0.12 inches. We have a handle thickness of 0.4 inches, a handle length of 4.2 inches, and then a blade width of 0.96 inches. The thickest part would be here, which comes in at right around oh, that is not the thickest part. Yeah, 0.9694, 0.94, 0.93. Thickest part here, 0.95. Yeah, that's about it. So without further ado, let's get into the full review of this knife. The ZT0450CF. This is one of my Grail knives. This is one of those knives that at the point of time when I wanted to buy it, or when I first saw it, I'll be like, wow, this is really expensive for a knife to be bought. On BHQ right now, they run at about 196 USD. I bought it a few years ago when before the price hikes started to kick in, so it was a little bit cheaper than that. The blade here, we have here in an amazing blade steel. This is S35VN. This is considered one of the premium blade steels, not the highest end. It's not Vanex, it's not M4, it's not M390, but S35VN is still pretty high up there in terms of the steel spectrum. S35VN is a stainless steel. It holds its edge retention pretty well, and one of the things about S35VN is that it is a updated version of S30V. S30V, from my understanding, has a little bit extra corrosion resistance, a little bit extra edge retention, but that higher edge retention kind of made it a little bit brittle, a little bit chippy. The S35VN here just adds a little bit of toughness to the blade, so it sacrifices a little bit of edge retention for increased toughness to make it a little bit more harder use in terms of a blade steel. The blade itself, as you can see, has a nice coating, a black DLC coating. Now, this is not for everyone. Some people don't like the black blade. I think it looks pretty good. It's my only black bladed. It's my well, not my only one anymore. I have the Rat 2 from EDC from EDCness. But at that time, this is the only black bladed knife that I've ever bought. Has a pretty nice coating. It's even all around, and on top of that, it holds its color quite well. I don't see any like scratches or whatever. Granted, being a Grail knife, I don't use this hardly. Well, I use it, but I don't like hard use it much at all. So let's talk about the blade shape right here. It is coming in at 0.12 inches, so not super thick. However, it doesn't have a very tall grind. It only has about 70% height grind. So that just means that this is not the best slicer in my collection. It doesn't start off very thick, but it doesn't go to a very fine edge either. That's because of how shallow this grind is. On top of that, we have here a relatively nice blade shape. We have a lot of flat right here, some nice belly, and a nice good tip. The tip, as you can see here, is relatively strong for such a thin knife. That is because it kind of balloons out towards the tip right here, which means that it's a little bit more hardy when it comes to any kind of penetrating cuts that you need to do. You need to punch into a bottle or a can or whatever. This thicker tip will be very helpful in that situation. Another thing I want to point out is that this blade right here, you have flat, you have a belly, but it kind of flattens out a bit here. So rather than it have a curve that goes all the way to the point here, it curves up a little bit, and then just at the tip here it straightens out a bit. This gives it a nice like reach. It has a nice pointy reach, which is great that if you need to do any kind of pull cuts, or if you need to kind of cut in and then just push at the tip or push through with the tip, that little bit of flat at the tip here is very nice. Another thing I really like about this blade is that the jimping here. The jimping here is not as rough as something like my Gonzo FH11, or not as rough as the Dragonfly or my Para 3 Lightweight. So it does provide a little bit of traction. It's not completely useless like my other Gonzo. It does provide traction, but the corners here are actually rounded off. This makes it very comfortable on your finger. It doesn't feel like it digs into your finger or sharply digs into your finger. So that's the blade. I love the blade still. Coating is nice. Nice blade design. However, the edge could be a little bit thinner. The grind could be a little bit higher. Another thing I want to point out is that because of the size of this flipper tab, you can't really get down to, if you're ever cutting on the board, you can't really get down to the board much at all. As you can see here, as you can see here, it kind of goes in like that, and you can only get up to the belly if you're cutting onto a board. Fine if you're like cutting, like you're doing any kind of floating cuts, you're cutting it in mid-air, but if you're cutting onto a board, you are going to get a lot of blade real estate that doesn't hit the cutting board itself. So moving back, let's talk about the flipper tab. This is my favorite flipper tab for a couple of reasons. Number one, it's not pointy. Some flipper tabs really come up to a sharp point. Number two, it has some really nice jimping that provides a lot of good traction. And number three, the jimping is actually nice and rounded all the way around. So it becomes very comfortable in hand. You don't get that sharp jimping feeling that you get on some other jimp flipper tabs out there. Very comfortable, great for this kind of light switch flicks, but it's really good for these kinds of push button kind of opening mechanisms like this. So where you just push down that, very comfortable in hand. My favorite flipper tab thus far. Now let's talk about the pivot. It does run on ball bearings, so it comes out as very smooth, very little friction from the ball bearings. However, the pivot is nice and coated. However, the pivot is a free spinning pivot. So what that means is that I have to put in a tool on this side and on this side, and then unscrew it. I can't just hold down this side and unscrew it like here. This side here will spin as well, especially because that I need to use Loctite on this guy. If I do not use Loctite, then the pivot will actually slowly start to unscrew itself, and then it'll be out of tolerance. The centering will be off. I will get a little bit of blade play. Once you add a little bit of Loctite here, some thread locker, medium strength thread locker, it holds its position really well, and then it doesn't slowly unscrew itself, and it doesn't introduce any blade play. But you need to use that Loctite, which means that when it comes to taking it apart, you need to use tools on both sides. Kind of unfortunate. Going to the body here, fantastic body. We have full carbon fiber on this side, as you can see here. Carbon fiber all the way around up until the inside, and it's also a nice matte kind of carbon fiber. It is not like a flat, shiny kind of carbon fiber, which I'm not a big fan of, but it's a nice matte finish. You get a very nice like scaling of the carbon fiber that you get right here that you can feel on your fingers. On this side, you have some nice coated titanium. No complaints there. Titanium is extremely light, carbon fiber is extremely light. Both are very, very strong. I do like these back spaces, these green back spaces. I'm a sucker for like black and green combo, really like that kind of combo. However, just you gotta know that the screws right here screw straight into the titanium. So it goes into the back spaces and then goes, it goes into the, not back spaces, the back standoffs here, and then screws into the titanium. So you gotta be careful. The steel is stronger, it's harder than titanium, so if you're not careful, you might accidentally strip out the titanium. As long as you don't try to force the screw in, then you'll be just fine. Pocket clip right here. Pocket clip, I'm not such a big fan of. It does provide a lot of good retention. Okay, it does keep the knife in. It is a nice length right here. Okay, however, it is not deep carry. I personally really like a deep carry pocket clip, and this is not. I will eventually buy a deep carry pocket clip from maybe Etsy or MXG Gear or whatever, just to compensate for that problem. That's probably my only biggest gripe about this knife, which is the pocket clip. Once I change that, I think I'll like this knife a little bit more. Another big gripe I have about this knife is the ergonomics. So The knife here is definitely a smaller knife, so if you have smaller knives like my hand, it is gonna, this size is fine. However, this positioning of these two little bumps right here is very unergonomic, shall we say. And I'll show you, and I'll explain to you why. Now there's two ways I can hold this knife. First way is I can grip here and then have all 4 of my fingers between the flipper tab and this back kick right here. However, when I'm holding it like that, right, you get this little point right here that digs into my middle finger, like that, so it creates a kind of a hot spot there. The other option is that I can use this finger choil to for my index finger, and I can have my other 2 fingers here. Unfortunately, once I try to do that, once I try to grip it normally, this bump, this point right here, hits into my ring finger, onto my pinky finger. Now if I try to avoid those bumps entirely and stretch it out like that, it then becomes a little bit too wide for my hands. I'm sure if you have bigger hands, then this is not going to be that much of a problem for you. However, with my smaller hands, I kind of naturally want to hold it like this. If this was completely smooth, didn't have this little bump right here, my fingers would actually fit nicely in here and it'd be a very nice strong grip. If my hands were a little bit wider, then I do not need to spread my fingers up so much to get here. If this little bump here was not here, if this little point was not here, then I can hold it like this, have my index finger here, and then have these 3 fingers all the way out here. The other way is that I can actually have my index finger here and then squeeze all 3 fingers here, but then it's not that comfortable because then my fingers feel very squeezed. I can't find the perfect way to hold this knife completely comfortably. The best way is I can just hold it like this, and slowly my fingers get used to the fact that there is a point here, and then having my thumb here is going to be, from there it's going to be fine. So ergonomically, it is not going to be the best knife for me ergonomically. If you have slightly bigger hands, it'll be fine. If they didn't have this little point here, then it'll be fine for smaller hands. Another weird thing about this knife is that sometimes you feel like your finger is a little bit far away from the blade. I don't have any samples here, but I'm used to having knives with a bit of a finger choil, or where this portion right here is a little bit closer to the edge of the blade. So I just feel like I'm just a little bit too far away from the blade from what I'm used to. It's not bad, it's not a deal breaker, but it's just something that I'm not particularly used to. So that's it. In conclusion, what do I feel about this knife? Because of the high investment for this knife, I was a little bit let down at first. This is one of those knives that, now I have a lot of knives that I really love when I first get them, and I slowly find flaws over time. The Para 3 Lightweight was like that. The Gonzo F754 was like that. This knife, when I first got it, probably because I had such high expectations, started off with a lot of flaws. I found a lot of flaws. I found that the grind was not that sharp. Find that the ergonomics was not that good. Carrying it was not so joyful, because not only is it not a deep carry pocket clip, but because this part here is really narrow, you don't carry it here, your pants kind of go up to here, then you have this much of the knife sticking out. But eventually this is one of those knives that over time, I think my hand just started getting used to it, and this has become a knife that becomes, the more time I spend with it, the tougher time I have in trying to sell it. At the end of the day, visually this knife looks fantastic. Carbon fiber, not only visually but in terms of its texture, looks and feels great. The coating on the blade, the premium steel, the action, my god, I didn't talk about this action. This action is so good because it has such a nice detat. This detat just makes it rocket out of there. You disengage, you have some good lock bar, you have some good lock bar tension, and then it doesn't completely drop shut, but it is smooth enough. And then that little suck in from the detat, just watch that suck in, listen to that suck in. That's nice. That's a sign of a really good detat. Oh, and I forgot to mention, it also has a pretty nice detat ball. I'm not sure if it has a detat ball ramp. Hold on, let me just have a look at the... Okay, it does not have a detat ball ramp. But it does have a stainless steel lock bar insert, and an over travel stop, which means that you can't accidentally push this beyond the frame itself, which is very nice. It's a nice little bit of insurance. So now at the end of the day, it has quite a bit of flaws. It's not completely ergonomic. It doesn't have a detent ball ramp. It is not like the sharpest knife. It doesn't come to a very fine edge. It doesn't have a deep carry pocket clip, but once you look at the good stuff, you know, you look at the design, look at the color combo, which I really like, look at this gorgeous CF, amazing action, this has become a really good Grail knife for me. It's definitely not a knife I'm going to be using for any kind of hard use. It's not a user, it's not a beater, but for what it is, for my first Grail knife, I actually really like it. And what happened, maybe like the first week or so after I had this, I accidentally dropped it on its corner, and you're not really going to be able to see it, but there is just a tiny little crack up there. Okay guys, oh, and one last thing I forgot to mention. When the first time I had to take this knife apart, pivot came out fine, this back screw came out fine. This screw had way too much Loctite on it. I had to use like the I can't remember what trick I used, whether I used a stronger screwdriver or whatever, but I had to kind of crank down. I had to kind of crank down on the screwdriver a little bit to unscrew this, and there is just a little bit of wear on that screw. When you use good bits, that's not going to be a problem. That still comes out with a T6 as long as you're using good bits, but just keep in mind, I did have a little trouble taking that out. I did email KAI, which is the company that owns ZT. I did email them, and then they were helpful enough. They said that, you know, if I want to get a new screw, I have to talk to the guy that I bought this from, which is Thomas Tools. However, I felt like that didn't, it was a bit too much trouble for the time that I would need to wait for it to come by. So it still works as a screw. So at the end of the day, I don't really see that much of a need to change the screw because it still works. Okay guys, that is the end of the review. Do comment down below what is your first Grail knife, and how much did it cost, and what did you do with it. And guys, as always, stay ready.